At that point, I said, okay, Lord, shut every door if this is not from you. He actually called me out of my corporate job. But at the same time, I said, okay, Lord, now that I see you're opening the doors, it's from you. Give me your vision. It was not the audible voice of the Lord, but 10 minutes later, he said, take 50% of your profits to fund anti-trafficking work. And I knew in my spirit that was it.
Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Kurt and Kristen Ludhart, your hosts and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's helped raise over $500 million and help elect over 100 members of Congress, 15 governors, 15 U.S. senators, and 1 president. So business owners, what if you could exponentially grow your business by tapping into a lucrative and engaged audience of 76.5 million people that we call Liberty Spenders? These Americans spend $5 trillion a year, and they're motivated to buy from businesses and brands that share their values. If you want to learn more about this, you can get access to our new best-selling book at libertyspenders.com/free.
Our guest today is Allison Madrigal, the founder of Rescue America, a mission that exists to rescue, revive, and empower the sexually exploited through a 24/7 rescue hotline and emergency response. Since its inception in 2014, Rescue America has responded to over 8,000 hotline calls and rescued over 1,200 victims of sexual exploitation, most being domestic U.S. citizens, which we're going to get into later because that was the most surprising thing here. But welcome to Liberty Spenders, Allison.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Allison, we are excited to talk to you for many reasons, but we wanted to start by just taking listeners back because we know a little bit about your story, but take us back to that pivotal moment. You're thriving in corporate America. You've got $1 million territories. You know, you're very successful in your career. You're launching innovative products. And yet suddenly, as we know God sometimes does, he starts talking to us. He starts whispering in our ear. He starts helping us know that we need to go in another direction. And walk us through how you first sensed him and how you really heard what you felt like he wanted you to do next.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was raised in a Lutheran church, and so I always have known Jesus for my entire life, but I was never taught that I could actually hear the voice of God and he could direct my steps. And so I was, as you said, in my dream job in corporate America at age 30, had the dream job, great company to work with, great bosses. And there was this stirring inside of me that I knew I was supposed to be doing something else. Whenever I would be still, whenever I'd sit still, this stirring would come up and I couldn't even sit still until I tapped into it. And so I knew God was speaking something to me like, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this. I'm going to use it, but I have something new for you. And so it was about a 2.5-year journey where I actually, the first time I heard God's voice, I actually took a trip to Florida on the beach during Thanksgiving. And God spoke very clearly to me through things coming to me. And so a lot of people are like, how do you actually hear the voice of the Lord? And the first thing you have to do is believe that you can hear the voice of the Lord. You know, Jeremiah 29:13 says, if you seek me with your whole heart, you will find me. And so it's in our belief system. Do we really believe that God can speak today as he did to Moses, as he did to Abraham, as he did, you know, in the Old Testament and the New Testament? And so it's a belief system. And so once I tapped into that, your awareness is heightened of like, what is actually coming to me, right? And so at that moment, I went to Florida, and a couple of the things that happened, I was driving there and it was Thanksgiving Day and I had the radio on, and this guy was talking about a mission trip to India and how there were kids begging for money. And I literally got chills from the bottom of my feet all the way to my head. And I'm like, I've never experienced this sensation before. I'm like, note that down, right? Then that night during my devotions, one of the questions was, where have you not been responding to God? Maybe it's A, B, C, or D, a missions trip. And I'm like, okay, India, missions trip. So I'm just writing these things down. And then I started reading the book, Eat, Pray, and Love, where she goes to India. And this guy from Texas was there. I was from Houston, Texas, and all this. So I'm writing it down. Well, then the kicker was, I go riding my bike through town, going to these little shops, and there's these rings sitting there. And I find this ring and I'm like, oh, I love this ring. I wonder how much it is. Didn't have a price on it. So I gave it to the lady. I was like, hey, can you give me the price on this? So she's like, She comes back. She goes, oh, this didn't have a price on it because this ring is from India.
Oh my.
And I am like, oh my goodness. So I tell her the journey. And she's like, oh, I tell her the book about Eat, Pray, and Love. And she's like, oh, I knew the guy in Eat, Pray, and Love from Texas. He was my best friend before he died. So it was this whole, all these things coming to me. And I'm like, okay, so I left that trip going, I've heard God's voice. I think he wants me to go on a mission trip to India. I have no idea why. So basically that was the turning point when I was able to hear his voice. Then I was all in. I'm like, I want more. I want to hear God's voice. I want to start reading the Bible from A to Z. Right. And so I started looking for mission trips to go to on India. And that is where God opened my eyes to sex trafficking in India. And so where women would actually sell themselves and their babies would be sleeping under their beds. Oh. And so that was my first awareness of trafficking was actually over in India. And the Lord did not open my eyes until probably 2 or 3 years later that it's actually happening in America in your own backyard. And so for those 2 to 3 years, I was just praying about it. And then God started bubbling up all these things.
Wow. You know what I think is interesting about what you've just shared, and this topic has come up with many people on the podcast, and I learned so much from each person's specific story and how they themselves have tried to wrestle with that, of hearing God's voice and what does that mean. And what I appreciate is every time you kind of felt something or noticed something, I love how you wrote it down.
Yeah.
I think it's just the same in, goal setting or, trying to have your mindset right on the things that you want to accomplish or, business outcomes, the importance of journaling.
Yes.
And yet I think what's interesting, maybe I'm the only person who's thinking this, so maybe this is for more than just me. But we know the importance of that and how that keeps kind of your brain and your subconscious kind of working. And I feel like, what's interesting as you were saying that was it's like you're validating also, hey, Lord, I think I'm hearing you. I'm going to write this down, even without saying it. Yep. Right? Like you didn't, because what I often do is I'm like, okay, I think I'm hearing this. God, is this true? If it's true, help me know. Right. Or something like that. And yet documenting it, I feel like it's like, oh, I think I noticed something. I noticed something.
Yeah. I call it following the breadcrumbs.
Yes.
You can go back and when times get tough, right? You can go back to the journal and say, no, God, you said A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, I know this was you. And so, and then sometimes you think you are hearing God's voice and it wasn't his voice, but write it down anyway, because God will show you, was that him or was that not him?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about for a second as I heard you, because I think about things that I want in my life, right? So I would like to see our business make more money. I'd really love to pay a guy to mow our lawn. And these things are my desires, and neither one of them are inherently wrong, right? And so when I think about hearing God's voice, I think about, we come from marketing and media and polling, and what we call this confirmation bias in polling, right? So you decide, like in a political campaign, you'd say, I think that, Kurt Luedhart's going to win this race for Congress. And then your mind finds all the reasons why to confirm what you already believe. And it ignores things that might be contradictory to that belief, right?
Yep.
And so when I think about
listening
to God, I think I explain, maybe God's telling me something, but I'm afraid it's, maybe I'm not hearing it because I think it's me, not him.
Yep.
Or I am hearing my voice and calling it God's. So what's the, that's I think an important thing. I imagine I'm not the only one who thinks about it this way. How would you say, okay, I know that I didn't just think it would be cool to go to India. Like that sounds like fun. It's a mission trip, but still it's you get to go to India. So what would help you or others distinguish between, hey, this is, I want to do this versus no, God wants me to do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You really have to get your soul, which is your mind, your will, and your emotions. It needs to be at neutral, which sometimes, like the greatest desires of your heart, you're like, I so want that thing, right? But it's like, wait, is this God's will for my life? Is this the timing? And so to position your soul, mind, will, and emotions at neutral and saying, God, I trust your will is the best, whether you say yes, no, or another direction, and looking for everything that could be coming in from a yes or a no or another direction. And so it's really trusting that God's will is the best and not my own self-will in that situation.
Well, and I think knowing that you can be content with either answer.
Yes.
And can you honestly do that? Which I don't think it's some prerequisite. We're allowed to be disappointed. We're allowed to say, all right, God, I think you're wanting me to do this. I really don't want to do this. I don't think I'm qualified to do this, but I trust. But I do think that that's where the obedience, comes in for me is, is this just be a nice thing? Oh, it's a nice thing. And what's really convicted me over the years is, no, if you love the Lord and you're trying to follow him, then you are to be obedient.
Yes.
And submit to whatever you think that is, which is very difficult. I mean, I sure want my children to submit and obey when I, tell them to do something. Even when my 5-year-old daughter says, "Oh, but I don't want to," and I think, boy, do I know how you feel, honey.
Yes.
And we don't always get to let that dictate.
Absolutely. And sometimes what the end result of obedience seems very unsuccessful. You're like, Lord, why did you tell me to do this? But I've learned that the definition of success is being obedient. Whether you see it now or you see it in 10 years, or you may see it in heaven, that God can ask us to do something. And it's all about, am I obedient? And then you let the results go, which is really, really hard.
Yes. The earthly outcome that you can see is not the measurement.
Yep.
That's great. And I'm thinking about this. And so, I think you've used this phrase before about pressing in and, you're talking about what you're doing in terms of journaling, but I'd really love to understand too, like, what does your daily rhythm look like? Because you said when this happened, you were like, okay, I want to read the Bible. I want to do more. So what does that look like? If someone's trying to maybe navigate a new season or transition into doing this more, what would you recommend they do on a regular basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing is setting aside time every day to just be with the Lord. And that can look different for so many people. For me, it is, I get up, I get my coffee, and I go sit in my chair. I grab my Bible, my journal, maybe a book, worship music. But every day it can look a little different. Maybe God says, go to the Word. Maybe he says journal. Maybe it's like, actually, I'm going to go for a walk and pray. Some people hear God in the wilderness, in the mountains, or, in the ocean, if you live by those places. And so it can look very different for many different people. And so I would say, don't put it in a box, but the thing is actually, basically putting it on your calendar and saying, I'm going to use this time for the Lord. And I even, so much of the strategy for Rescue America came in my time with the Lord. It would just, I call it downloads. And some days it would just download. And this is what I need to do today. This is what I need to do tomorrow. Right. And so it's really setting aside that time, but also don't put yourself in a box of the way that God's going to speak to you. And some days it's 30 minutes. Some days it's 3 hours. So yeah.
People listening are like, okay, well, I guess it depends on your schedule and your level of flexibility.
Right. Or he'll wake you up at 3 a.m. and not let you go back to sleep.
Yeah. He'll make the time, right? He'll, that's going to fall through. Oh, I guess I have time now for this. Yeah.
I wanted to now get in a little bit. We're going to return to this, how God talks to you and listens. But so we're telling the beginning part. You feel called to do something different. You did your, India trip, and then you ended up founding Rescue America. So how did that come together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was in the insurance industry at that time, selling property and casualty insurance to businesses. At the same time, my brother and sister-in-law were going through infertility. And so I saw them spending all this money trying to get pregnant. But the results, like they may have a baby and they may not. And so the best way I can describe it is the Lord started downloading to me an insurance policy for in vitro fertilization, where if the couple doesn't go through 3 attempts of IVF and they don't have a baby, they get their money back. And I'll tell you, when he started to download, I would stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning working on the PowerPoint, working on all the, performas and budgets and all this stuff. And it's like, I had to force myself to go to sleep because I'm like, oh, I got to get up at 5 and work out and go to work. And so it was just this stirring in me where it was just this grace upon me. And he brought every single piece of the puzzle, like the CDC tracks all the IVF insurance or IVF procedures, right? So I had all the data. So it was like everything was coming to me. So at that point, I said, okay, Lord, shut every door if this is not from you. And all the doors opened. So he actually called me out of my corporate job to start what is Vitality Solutions, which is an IVF insurance product. But at the same time, I said, okay, Lord, now that I see you're opening the doors, it's from you. Give me your vision for Vitality. And it was as clear. It was not the audible voice of the Lord, but 10 minutes later, I knew God said, he said, take 50% of your profits to fund anti-trafficking work. And I'm like, and I knew in my spirit that was it. And so I left my corporate job. And that's a whole story in itself, how God got me out of it. He gave me some consulting gigs. But I didn't know it was going to be 2.5 years from when I left my job to when Vitality launched. And so that whole journey is a whole nother podcast about God's provision and all of that. But
I'll say,
actually,
at some point you're thinking, hello, Lord,
right.
it's been a minute here.
Exactly. So during that time frame, while I'm taking my product to market, I'm meeting with insurance carriers, I had a lot of time on my hands. So again, it was 3 or 4 hours a day with the Lord, but then it was actually understanding anti-trafficking in America. And I'm like, I knew the word and that was it. And so I just started meeting with people. I met with, there were 3 nonprofit leaders in Houston at the time that I met with to understand the problem and what was going on. So really I took, I have an MBA in business consulting. So really I took a consultative approach to the anti-trafficking landscape from a funding perspective, because that's all I knew I was supposed to do was fund it. So I'm going, okay, if we're going to fund the solution, what's out there and what are the needs? And so that's really how I came into the anti-trafficking realm. And through all that, everything was coming to me to start a local hotline in Houston. So the biggest need was, there were groups doing outreach to survivors, to victims, and there were long-term safe homes, but there was no way to get the victim out of their situation, assess them, stabilize them, and then pair them with that best long-term care home. And so everything was coming to me. And before I knew it, I'm like, I have everything here to start this hotline. So I got connected to a guy in Atlanta, Jeff Shaw, who's a dear brother in Christ. And he's like, Allison, we'll give you whatever you need to launch this in Houston. And I'm like, why don't you just come launch it, Jeff? I'll just fund it, right? So we really thought it was going to be his organization launching. And then God flipped it on us on the last minute, like, no, Allison, I need you to launch this. And I'm like, Vitality Solutions wasn't even launched. So that happened April 2014. And I'm like, what about Vitality, right?
Wow.
But it was everything coming to me. I didn't have to go and knock on anybody's doors. I literally took one appointment. The next appointment came. Right? And so I'll share a quick testimony. One of the nonprofit leaders in Houston at the time said, Allison, we need this hotline here. 30 days. We'll go all in. We'll be your fiscal sponsor. And I'm like, okay. So I go home that day and I'm like, Lord, if you want this hotline here, you have a lot of work to do in 30 days. I need to find a place to take the survivors. I need a government or a law enforcement connection. And I need to figure out how we're really doing this rescue piece. And in 7 days, everything had come to me. And so at that moment, you're like, it's really the fear of the Lord of like, I can't make this happen. Like, I have to be obedient. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was hard because you're thinking like, well, what's with Vitality, right? You're doing this whole other thing. So long story short, Rescue Houston launched in April 2014, and then Vitality Solutions launched a year later. And so, again, God's order, and a whole story. Vitality is still on the back burner. And God just breathed on Rescue Houston. Actually, in 2019, we came to Denver through a church, actually, that I encountered a trafficking victim on their front doorstep. They didn't know what to do. They had to create a solution. They said, can you come to Denver? And so at that point, I came to Denver. We're thinking Rescue Houston, Rescue Denver. And then we started getting hotline calls in from all over the nation. So we only marketed our number in Houston. But when you look at the population that's trafficked, they may be in Houston today. They may be in New York on the weekend. The next week, they may be in LA. And so our number just got out. And so I always say God is our chief marketing officer. And we were just confronted with, okay, we are now getting calls all over the US. Okay, we're now Rescue America. And so again, the Lord just releasing the strategy on all of that as it came to be.
If you're listening to this show, it's probably because you understand something most people don't. Marketing to Liberty spenders isn't just about ads or tactics, it's about trust. And in the real world, trust moves through relationships. And that's why private introductions and deal flow are such a core part of what we do.
So FastPass is a private introduction and deal flow network for Christian and conservative leaders who already have influence and want to scale fast. It's not open networking, it's intentional introductions between people who already share alignment. We've seen one client land a $25,000 opportunity from a single introduction. Another told us that FastPass has become his largest source of referrals, not because of volume, but because of fit. And yet another closed her equity round at a key moment just due to the right introduction.
When you book a one-to-one consult with us, we're not handing you a list or making big promises. Instead, we're having a real conversation about what you're building, who you want to meet, and whether FastPass makes sense for this season for you. So no pressure, no hustle, and no awkward pitch from us.
Yeah. If you're ready to grow through relationships instead of forcing everything on your own, head to libertyspenders.com/FastPass and book a one-to-one consult with us.
In worst case, you leave with clarity. Best case, the right introductions change the trajectory of what you're building.
Okay, back to the episode. Well, and I'm curious about this. So I thought about this question of asking you, Allison, because I know that you have, as you said, been very close to this. So, you know, we shared already over 12,000 or 1,200 rescues, right? Mostly domestic victims. From the hotline calls that you've either taken or that you know of that have gone on, just for our listeners, what do you think are the most common ways that these victims are manipulated, right? How are they groomed? How is it that Americans' kids or young adults are becoming victims of this? And maybe what are some tactics that parents wouldn't already suspect? Because, of course, this is a topic that is, you know, had a lot of exposure in the last several years.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two main ways that victims in the U.S. are trafficked. One is familiar trafficking. So most victims, maybe their mother, their father, their uncle, their aunt actually have been trafficking since they were children. And so they're actually born into it. And they don't even realize that it's not normal until maybe they're 20, 30 years old. So that is the first way. But the second way, where probably most of our listeners, is the online grooming of teenagers. And so when teenagers are, you know, on Instagram, Snapchat, all that, the traffickers know how to get them. And so they are looking at it as a business proposition. This girl, I could go sell this girl over and over again, right, to bring in the money. And so what they will do is they will actually find a way to get into that girl or boy's life. So they may send, true story, what's called a groomer. They know this girl's going to church camp, which at a major church in the U.S., they send a groomer to go into church camp and befriend this girl. She's age 17, which is very pivotal because when they turn 18, it's a lot harder to prove trafficking. If they're a minor, you don't have to prove fraud, force, or coercion. But they will send a groomer in. So this girl was sent in and paid to go to this church camp to go be friends with this other girl. So this new girl comes out of church camp in the summer. She has this new friend, and her friend's introducing her to all of her friends, this new group. She comes from an incredible, amazing family, who father is very successful. They go to church, the all-American family. So she starts hanging out with these new people, doing a little bit of drugs, kind of they're kind of pulling her away from her family a little bit, but it's nothing like, oh, this is not a normal teenager, right? And so she has this new friend group. Well, she turns 18 and she actually goes out to a party. She wasn't supposed to be there. She Snapchat saying, hey, I need a ride home. And she's friends with the trafficker. She doesn't know he's a trafficker. He said, hey, I'll come pick you up. So he gives her a bottle of water, which is completely drugged. So she drinks the bottle of water. She's completely out. So she, in an 8-day period, was already trafficked and branded tattoos on her. So it's their property. She sold multiple times, completely drugged for the 8 days. And her father, again, very well-to-do businessman. He had resources, he knew people, and it took them 8 days to find his daughter before they thought she was going to be sold, could be overseas.
So you think this is more common? Like what you've just described seems like outlandish. Like
yes,
could only happen in a movie.
Yep.
That's a lot of effort and that's a lot of work to put into this. Mm-hmm. So that's shocking to me. How often, is this tactic employed? I need a reality check here.
Yes, it's employed in every high school. You've got trafficking, every large city, every little city that you have someone trying to traffic a person, because when they look at it from the business model, it's a long time, the buying cycle, right? You've got to groom, you've got to create this product, right? But once you get them, you can sell them 5 to 10 times a day, making thousands of dollars a day off of one victim. Most traffickers have 10 to 12 victims that they're selling multiple ways. And it's online. So selling basically online, there's hundreds of websites where victims are sold online. And
that's just very high risk, right? They're going in person because again, my filter on this is so much is happening online, group chatting, they get you into Discord or something. So I keep thinking of this low touch, right? But they build a relationship through online conversations and then they go to meet and then that's when they're taken. Exactly. But what you've just described is, just disturbing on a whole nother level. So I'm looking for you to tell me that this is not happening that often.
I wish I could.
That's not what you're saying.
I wish I could. And when we look at the problem as a whole, there would not be trafficking if there was not a demand. You've got to look at supply and demand, right?
Yes.
And so and it all stems back to pornography, because pornography is the gateway. Strip clubs are the gateway into a brain of a man or a woman. And the brain, pornography, strip clubs, all of that, the chemicals that it releases is actually, it's a greater addiction than heroin on the brain. And so our culture has become so highly sexualized, right? Where you can get porn on your phone in your bedroom, right? That will lead to going, oh, this woman's 25 years old. Now I need to see a 20-year-old. Now I need to see an 18-year-old. Now I need to go in person. Now I need to see a 16-year-old. And this cycle just continues. And so that's the root cause. If we want to be real, it's the traffickers, right, that are producing the product and the buyers. But the traffickers wouldn't produce it if there wasn't money to be made.
Mm-hmm. So I know you speak at a lot of churches. So what would you say about the American church's response? Do you think we've been slow to realize, how big of an issue this is? Or what would you say, to that? What is the American church doing and what should we be doing?
Yeah, great question. So part of the church is stepping up, volunteering, funding, helping fund it. Part of the church has their eyes in the sand. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely believe that this is a systemic problem where you have to look at yourself. You have to ask yourself, am I addicted to pornography? Do I go to strip clubs? Because it's so common in America. And the church doesn't want to look at themselves. You've got to look at yourself first. How am I contributing to the problem? And that takes humility and a whole nother level of spiritual maturity, and saying, I'm going to follow the Lord when it looks completely opposite of the world.
Well, and you mentioned about, porn, and for goodness sakes, I'm not saying that this is only for men, but I can't imagine that the difficulty in trying to remain pure when you don't even have to go looking for it. It's served to you without without you even trying to go and look for it. And so I just, recognize that that's part of the reason why this has exploded so much, is not only the ease of which you can get it, but also it is sometimes pushed to you. Maybe I shouldn't say sometimes, but it is pushed to you as a consumer without you seeking it out.
Yep.
And so now, the guardrails you have to put up, for yourself, and, the level of discipline to make sure you push that away is just a lot higher than it ever would have been.
Absolutely.
Decades ago.
Yeah. I mean, kind of related to this is, you've been working in this space for a while. You've been in contact with victims, law enforcement, all sorts of people who are working on this issue. What's the biggest myth that, somebody like me might believe, having not, participated in this or, been really engaged? What's a myth that you'd love to bust?
Yeah.
We just learned one, for me anyway.
Well, just what I alluded to, the biggest myth is the women in the strip clubs are trafficked, most of them. The women in pornography are trafficked, most of them, and men. And so our culture, it's really normalized in our culture. Corporate America, it was like strip clubs galore. Like, you just go to the strip club, right? And it's this normal part of society. And then when you dig in, you realize there's a backstory to this. And even if the women in the strip club do not have a trafficker, they have been typically trafficked at one point in their life, right? Nobody grows up and says, hey, I want to do this. There is a backstory to that. And so I think the biggest myth is like, oh, no, they choose to do this, right? They don't choose. They have a story of how they got into it. And if you sit and listen to it long enough, you'll realize it's a whole systemic issue confronting our culture.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, for example, I would have been initially introduced to the idea that sex trafficking was such a big problem watching that movie, Sound of Freedom. And of course, the parents are set in some South American country. I can't remember where they're from. And so my sort of subconscious perception was that these children being trafficked are not happening in Johnson County, Indiana, near Greenwood, where we live, but that's happening maybe in the big cities. Like, a lot of bad stuff happens in New York and LA, but this is Indianapolis after all. And this is suburbia. Things like that don't happen here. So it's what Kristen was sort of wrapping around before too, was just how much of this doesn't necessarily involve a border crossing, right?
Yes.
So I maybe am making more of a statement than a question, I guess. But that's the thing I'm finding. I'm perceiving differently talking to you. Is this this is happening in my home state right now somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
I get the economics of it, right? We're in business, and if you can, if your asset's worth $60,000 a month, you can spend a lot of money acquiring said asset. As awful as that sounds. So that's a big, different kind of perspective for me. So if I were, let's say I'm a parent, I'm now more aware of this. What might I be looking out for? Is there a red flag or something that you would say, hey, if you see this or you experience this, you ought to triple check?
Yes, absolutely. So I always tell parents, be good communication with your children. Educate them on what's happening. Be real with them. They're really never too young to start learning about this. But if you're, hey, you've talked to your children, this is going on. What are they pulling away from the family? Are they pulling away from different friends? Looking basically, are they not communicating with me? Has their behavior changed in any way? There's something going on probably behind the scenes. It may be online. All traffickers also will target, school age children, and they'll actually give them their own cell phone that the parents don't know about to communicate on that cell phone with them. And so, also traffickers online will, they'll present as this person that's interested in them. You're beautiful. You're da-da-da. Hey, send me a snapshot of you. Send me this kind of photo. And they get that kind of photo and then they blackmail the child. So you just have to be in real, understanding your child's emotional relationship with you. And as something has shifted in there, really digging deep and creating a safe space for your children to share with you. Because if they're afraid, mom and dad, they're going to blow up, they're whatever, creating, hey, this is a safe space. You can tell me anything.
Yep.
I've learned a ton here in the last 15 minutes, none of which is particularly encouraging. But but talk to me about this. So you feel led, you start the thing in Houston, now it's growing. But I'm now thinking about your own experience of, at some point you were like everybody else. This isn't a thing, right? Yep. And then you felt some exposure to it in India. Then you start working on your own, helping with starting the hotline. So what was it like those first few months, those first couple of years as you were learning and growing in your knowledge of this? What was the, maybe it was a very steep and quick learning curve, but it sounds like it would have been a real experience.
It was a total surreal experience. I will say I did not know what I was doing. So I came in with the mindset, be Jesus. Be Jesus to the caller, be Jesus to the survivor. And so that's my whole lens that I came in with. And so, which is speaking life over them, knowing there is a redemptive solution. Whoever is on the other end of the line, they are in oppression. They are in the kingdom of darkness. I know God can get them to the kingdom of light. So how do we talk? How do we encounter that person? It was all through the lens of Jesus, but from a, highly educated way of trafficking and the mental health and all that. I didn't know anything. The Holy Spirit was teaching me the whole way. And so I had to rely on the Holy Spirit for many, like I would ask, okay, what do we do with this survivor? For an example, survivor that we actually rescued in Houston, she was from Nebraska, my home state, which really hit me at the core. She had started being trafficked when she was 2 or 3 years old. She ended up in Houston. We got her back to Nebraska in a foster family. Then she ran again. Then she called me again. And she was in Kearney, Nebraska. And she was at the police station. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know what to do with her. Like, she's sitting there. She's asking for help. And I knew my aunt lived like 30 minutes away. And I was like, she's like, call your aunt. So I called my aunt. She happened to be driving past the law enforcement station, like literally at that moment. So she took the girl home with her, let her stay there for the week. And then we found placement in a shelter. But that's a very good scenario. Like, I didn't know what to do. And so you're just like, Lord, this is you. Show me what to do. And so it was a lot of those moments of, again, hearing God's voice and then being obedient.
Wow.
Yeah. And so you founded it in 2014, led it for over a decade. So now we're in 2025, but now you've passed on some of the day-to-day and you're feeling a calling to something new. So talk about that some.
Yeah, that's a great question. So last year, I felt the Lord, I knew my season at Rescue, being the CEO and leading it, was coming to a close. I know that my gifting is to take a vision and an idea and, get it into the market. But once it's ready to scale, I'm out and I need to go do my next thing. And so I knew it was coming to a close. And so it was, but I had to get some people in place to be able to really release it. And so it was July of this year where I took a week off because I knew the way that God called me into Rescue America. I knew it had to be the same way that he would call me out. Like, I can't quit because of spiritual warfare. I can't quit because it's too hard. No, it will be of the Lord of why you step out. And so took a week off in July, and God was very clear, get everything off your plate. I have something new from you. And he spoke those words actually through 3 different podcasts. One being a secular podcast of actually starting a company, and it's okay to release it. And it's a 24/7, and I'm like, okay, God's speaking. And then 2 other podcasts that came my way that week. And so I just knew in my spirit, God was saying, okay, get everything off your plate. And then I was like, okay, I think that's the CEO role, but what about the chairman of the board role? And the Lord confirmed. It took about a month to go like, no, everything off your plate. And so that's sort of that process. And so my last day actually was the end of September. And so I am in a season where I don't know what's next. I don't know what the new thing is, which is actually really good because I'm the type of person, like, if God shows me, I'll start running towards it. And I was in a season of burnout. So this work, and learning boundaries, like, okay, here's my boundaries. But I was in a season of, there's a term called vicarious trauma, where because you hear so much trauma, you actually take it on yourself. And so you really have to have good boundaries, self-care, which we do a lot at Rescue America. But I was at the point of like, okay, I'm spent. And so I know this next couple of months is just a rest and reprieve. I do feel like, what I'm realizing, I jokingly say, but it's kind of true. I have a PhD in anti-trafficking from the Holy Spirit. So Lord, how would you want me to get all this information out of me? Like just because I've experienced so much. And so I have had some words about using my voice in this next season to really share the issue and the problem, but not the problem. Like, how do we actually solve the problem? How do we create solutions that are not only going to free the survivors, but are going to free the buyers? Because at the end of the day, the buyers are enslaved as well. And so I don't know yet, but I'm excited, and we're going to see what God does.
Yeah. Well,
it'll be, it'll be interesting, like you said, how he's prepared you and what skills you've acquired, the connections, what are those things? And then how can you use that in the next chapter? Because, I can say with great confidence, obviously none of those things, like, he will use all of that.
Yes.
We have faith in that. So I want to ask you before we get to our lightning round question. So this has been very impactful for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So maybe a moment of truth for the audience. If someone is listening to this, they've listened to your story and they're feeling a tug right now to do something, take some action, listen to what the Lord is stirring in them. Maybe the right step is to volunteer. Maybe the right step is to write a check. Whatever that may be, what piece of advice would you give to that person right now who's listening, who's feeling something and trying to tell themselves maybe not to listen? Maybe what is a step they could take today before the sun sets today when they hear this, that they could take action, or they could try to confirm what they think they're hearing?
Yeah, they can email info@rescueamerica.ngo. You can just say, I heard this podcast and I feel in my heart, I'm stirring, I need to volunteer, I need to donate, or I want to learn how to hear God's voice. And I feel God calling me into this area in the world, or this area. And just let us know. And our team will send those emails. And if it's connection to me, if it's connection to someone else, we will get you started on that next step. And that's really just what you have to do in hearing God's voice. A lot of times when God prompts you to do something and you don't do it, he's not going to tell you until you do that next step. So the next step unlocks the next step, which unlocks the next step. you will not have the whole picture. And you don't want to have the whole picture because you would say no.
Yes. That is so true. Yes. He gives us just enough that we're ready to move to the next thing. And then just enough. If he revealed the whole thing, right. Who knows how he would respond. Well, that's excellent. And we'll make sure those things are in the show notes as well. So now we're going to move to our lightning round. All right. So we ask every guest the same 3 questions. Let's say you are laying down in your bed many, many decades from now. You're looking back on your life and you're thinking about legacy. How will you know you've had a life well lived?
That is a great question. I wouldn't even say it's by the outcomes or the achievements. Really, it would be, was I obedient to the Lord? Did I live out my destiny? Did I live into what God called me to? And if I can look back and see that, that's a life well lived. One of the things that drew me out of corporate America is I didn't want to be on my deathbed at 90 years old or 80 years old or whatever going, oh, I spent my life stressed out because I was worried about talking to a CFO, telling him that his insurance premiums went up $1 million. Like, I don't want to look back at my life and see that. I want to look back and go, oh, out of my obedience to the Lord, this is actually what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And now for maybe some lightness. We love asking guests this. It's so fascinating to hear what people say. So what is something that maybe has captured your interest recently? Maybe it's something that's taken you down the rabbit hole. Again, it could be a hobby, although a lot of us don't have time. We feel like everybody does. Maybe it's a book, spiritual insight, anything like that. What has captured your interest that maybe you're kind of obsessing over a little bit recently?
Great question. So I am in this phase. It's body transformation. So it's not a diet. It's actually transforming your body from fat into muscle. And so I am doing, and there's a lot of things that go into that, right? But eating protein, lifting heavy weights, walking, but it's a complete body transformation. And so the Lord has shown me in knowing like our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And to move into what God wants us to do in this next season, we have to make sure we're taking care of our bodies with our food choices. You know, our food in the US is the normal food is not good. So you have to be very specific, you know, what am I eating? What am I putting into my body? And how am I removing those toxins? And so that is my like all in, and it's incredible what your body can do. And so I'm experiencing it right now going, I never thought my body could do this. And so it's been a fun season of that. And then that's one side. And then another side the Lord has had me in a couple of years this is way deeper, is understanding satanic ritual abuse, which happens to a lot of trafficking survivors. And that's a whole nother realm. But it's understanding the cult and how they operate and how they actually in the spirit realm, traffic survivors. So,
well, my lighthearted follow-up is, are you wearing a weighted vest?
I'm not yet. I thought about
Inquiring minds want to know.
That's really hot around here.
I have now I am now seeing this. I'm like, well, this trend is picking up. So anyway, so
my coach has not suggested it yet, but
okay. All right. Yes. Well, you know,
we do see a lot of, I do see a lot of women who walk. There's very popular in our neighborhood. There's a group of women who walk, and I do. It's like a lot.
It's because it's supposed to be good for perimenopause and menopause.
So they say it's better than running.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So anyway, I thought, well,
done and done.
yeah. Kurt's like, please. Yeah. I don't want to have to deal with that. And then last but not least, I mean, I feel like, no more is needed, but we know you're looking into your next thing, but we always give guests a chance for 90 seconds, gratuitous self-promotion. So if somebody did not listen to the episode, and they're just coming on right now, or they're just hearing this one clip, what would you tell people about Rescue America, how they can get in touch with you, what the organization does, and how they can learn more?
Yeah. So Rescue America is a 24/7 rescue hotline for victims of sex trafficking across America. We believe God's A plan is for the church the individual bodies, not one single church building, but an individual body to rise up and be the solution with where you're at, whether you're in technology, whether you're in politics, whatever realm you're in. Like, this is a mandate from the church. Rescue America as a whole actually deploys. We're really the administrative platform, you could say, for people, everyday people that can get involved. And so we have 2 ways you can volunteer at Rescue America. One, we actually distribute our hotline number by placing outbound phone calls to victims of sex trafficking. So we have the system you sign into, and you're actually calling a victim on their own phone, because most of the time they answer because it's all coercion and how they're into it. And you're just saying, hey, I know I saw your ad online. If you want out of your situation, here's a hotline number you can call. Can I pray for you? Can I bless you? Really just going into that darkness and bringing that message of the light. So that's one way. And then the second way is to be a hotline advocate for Rescue America. So the first phone call that comes in are volunteers, and they're trained on how to answer that call. You sign up for 1 4-hour shift a day. And 1 4-hour shift a week. And you are just that person that collects all the information, passing it off to our team, and we handle it from there. And so these are both great ways to dip your toe into the water to see what it's going to look like. We provide all the training, all of that. If you are a kingdom funder and you want to help fund this mission, it does take dollars. And so you can email info@rescueamerica.ngo. You can actually serve a survivor of trafficking for $100 a month, giving them the opportunity to come out of the life and start their life over. And so those would be, or if you want to learn how to hear the voice of the Lord, email info@rescueamerica. My team will connect you to me, and I would love to have a conversation with you.
Love it.
Yes, this has been a great episode. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I think we got a lot out of both topics, really, the hearing the voice, but also learning more about how we can help and, what the true problem is like when we talk about sex trafficking. So thank you so much.
Thank you both for having me on. It's been so fun to be with you. And yeah, hope you have a blessed day.
We appreciate you, Allison. We appreciate your leadership on this topic and want to encourage you moving forward. And for those of you listening, we appreciate your time. Thanks for tuning in. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future. Thanks a lot. And until next time.